Hey, folks, welcome and happy 2024, and welcome to this very special episode of the Distortion Den. I am so psyched to have my good friend, Mr. Sean Kelly, come on the den, and we are going to do a deep dive into Sean's latest book, Don't Call It Hair Metal, Art in the Excess of 80's Rock, which went to #1 on the Amazon heavy metal book charts. So, as we all know, we know that Sean is a school teacher and a family man by day, but come night, he's a book author and a rock and roller. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Deke. Great to see you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, I'm back at you, pal. So it is great to see you, and this has been long overdue, and I'm very, very happy that you made time to come on the show, and we're going to get right into it now. But first of all, we got some business to attend to.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about this little ass kicker of a CD that came out back in September, Postcard from Germany, which is your studio debut. There's 2 studio tracks on here. It's About a Girl and Heaven's on the Other Side.
Yeah.
And the rest of it's a live show from Germany. Now, Sean, I have to ask you, how much of a thrill was it being able to cut studio tracks with Andy, Thumper, and Carl?
Oh, massive thrill. And it's, anytime you get to work with great musicians and wonderful people, that's always a blessing. But then when they just so happen to be part of the soundtrack of your life, even better. And that's what happened. And it was such a great, positive bonding experience for us. And you just get to glean so much knowledge from all the experience they've had working with amazing people, producers like, Kim Mitchell, and working with, Max Norman, and, you get to see all that expertise come into play, not to mention all their, many years of expertise. So it was great. We had such a great time. And I think that shows in the tracks. I'm very proud of the work on those.
And it totally shows in the tracks. I mean, it's fantastic. You have the best of Coney's worlds there. You have Carl laying down, and It's About a Girl. He knows how to channel that hard rock pop ditty into a nice 3-minute little kicker of a track. And then Andy has he's got that sinister vibe. I mean, his song Heavens would have just fit perfectly on 4, right around. It's got that boys club feel to it, just kind of that nice chill vibe to it. And kudos on your guitaring, especially on the Andy track. The solos are phenomenal. I mean, he just let you go with it.
Yeah, I was inspired by that track. I was inspired by both of them, but that one in particular, I had the space to kind of stretch out, and that's, basically the bulk of that was just kind of going for it, and that's kind of what came about. So I'm very proud of the playing on that track. So thank you for noticing. And but I'm inspired by great songs and great players, and I had all that to work with. So couldn't go wrong.
And so I have to ask you before we move on, is how do you separate yourself from just geeking out as that fanboy from North Bay, Ontario, that, holy shit, I'm sitting in front of Andy Kern cutting guitar, and then, Andy's probably pushing you a little bit, like, how do you separate that, being an equal musician to them, to totally not losing your shit as a fanboy?
Well, honestly, I'm 10 years in with these guys now, so I know them pretty well. Yeah. And also at the end of the day, I mean, people are people, and we're all music fans, and we all, kind of have that common goal, right? So, I definitely have moments where I look over and we're playing a gig someplace. I go, wow, I'm playing these songs. I can't believe it. That's amazing. And I've been really lucky throughout my career to have moments like that with a number of artists, right? Yeah. But beyond that, Coney feels like a band moving forward, and so I just kind of look at it every time we get together, that's an opportunity to keep pushing things forward. And those guys are not resting on their laurels.
No,
they're playing better, singing better than ever. If I can say with fair degree of authority that every time we go out there, we're out there to be the best band around. And, we're stepping up to the plate, and the last few shows, especially, just feels like it's gelling into this really magical thing. So Long way of saying I really just try and concentrate on making the best contribution I can to the music at any given time.
Mhm.
And I'm just there to, make the vision of the song better. That's it. That's all I'm thinking about.
You're doing a fantastic job just by those 2 songs. And I have to tell everybody, you got to hit up either Amazon or maybe in your local record shop and grab this, because
yeah, there's actually a new version of that too, right? There's the 40th anniversary version. Oh, you didn't know this?
you're killing me, man.
Oh yeah, Anthem Records just put out the new version. It comes with a remastered version of the debut Coney Hatch record. So it's a double package, 2 CD package that Anthem Records just put out. I mean, for me, that's where I started to fanboy out a bit, because now that's the label that put out all the Rush records, right? Like, I mean, that's pretty cool. So bit of a return home for Coney Hatch, because that was Coney Hatch's home too. So that 40th anniversary remastered version of the debut sounds incredible. And then, to have the live record come out. But that's the international version that you have there.
Yeah.
And it came out through Explorer One.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever version you get, I'm super proud of it.
Well, and I have to say, I really like the sequencing of the live show from Germany, how you guys just kick it right off with a couple of tracks from the self-titled debut. And then you guys move into a couple of tracks off of 4, your album from 10, 11 years ago. And then you get into like the deep cuts on the Friction album, 5, bonus 5-pack. I think was 5 songs from Friction, and then you guys go into Out of Hand, and then bookend it with Devil's Deck and Monkey Bars. I mean, it's genius. I mean, and I don't have to tell you because I showed you. It was my most listened to recording this year off of Apple, and everybody, you guys got to pick it up. And speaking of Out of Hand, you have a show coming up where you're going to be playing the album front to back.
Yeah, we are. We're doing Out of Hand on January 13th at Oakville Center for the Performing Arts. I love that concept. We've done it. We did it with the debut album at the Elma Combo.
Yep.
We're doing it with Out of Hand here, and then we're going to be playing the Friction album in its entirety in Manchester, England at the Firefest Festival in the UK in October.
Wow.
So it's, I love it. I love it. I love learning it. I love doing the album in sequence. It's a lot of fun, and it's interesting because sometimes you're starting with songs that are usually the encores, So But it's a whole it's a different vibe, and we will still obviously add classic songs into the set as well. So it's fun, and I can't wait. The Out of Hand record is such a cool record. Like, I think you were talking about how there's, the difference in Andy's approach and Carl's approach. I mean, what a great example of that. The more kind of angular, new wavy approach that Andy sometimes brings, and then the melodic rock thing that Carl brings. Like, that record really exemplifies that. And tons of great guitar playing from the great Steve Shelsky. I can't say
for sure.
Steve's guitar playing been an influence on me for sure. I mean, so it's an honor to play those parts, and I try to do my best to replicate it while still being my own man and doing my thing. And that's a great position to be in, and that they give me the latitude to do that too. So.
Oh, hell yes. I mean, everybody, if you're in that area, you got to go check it out. I mean, they're going to be playing songs like Too Far Gone and good old Shake It. And when I talked to Andy a few years ago, I said, dude, when you put out that song, I was 15, and I hear Shake It, shake the stick. And he said, it's not about that.
Yeah. It's like about video games, isn't it?
I was like, so he schooled me. So everybody go check out Sean and Coney, whether you're in Southern Ontario or in England, and I'll be at both those shows if I win Lotto.
And there you go. Well, keep scratching.
So anyways, Sean, now on to the book.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into the hair metal book, it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
Metal on Ice. And I realized I passed it, or I paid it forward to I just had a bit of a
your lights one.
Oh.
Yeah, the UFO moment. Lights out in Thunder Bay.
Lights out. There we go. Holy moly. But I have to say that I paid it forward to a friend who was moving to England, so I gave him my original copy.
Ah, okay.
So just recently I went on Amazon and look at this, folks. They have made the print big for old dudes like me who need.
I wonder about that. You know, it's funny because the publisher, it's out of it, like you can get it now print to order from the publisher. But a few people have mentioned that to me. I said, "What is that?" Like that's the new large print version.
It's exactly the same. It's just large print, so it's perfect. They can read it at night without using these.
So, okay, well that's good. I could use that too.
But and then, of course, as we all know, that Sean, when he did Metal on Ice 10 years ago, he came out with the companion CD, Metal on Ice, and he did the classic Canuck tunes like Heavy Metal Love by Helix, Metal Queen by Lee Aaron, who Sean currently plays with as well, On the Road to Rock by Kickaxe, Hey Operator by Sean and Coney, the Coney Hatch Boys, Don't You Make It Feel, Headpins, Keep the Spirit Alive, The Killer Dwarfs, and Metal on Ice was a song that you wrote and had a lot of help from Nick Walsh.
Yeah.
And this is I think this would be a collector's item now. So
yeah, we've got a few at my merch store at Rock Paper Merch.
There we go.
That was a cool experience. I was working up for a music management company at the time, Coalition Music. I was working in a program called Artist Entrepreneur, and I was doing some music directing for some of their artists. And Rob and Eric, who founders of the company, Rob Lanny and Eric Lawrence, they were fans of this era. They grew up, they came of age with that music too. And they said, "Hey, you're writing a book, maybe we could do something together." And they had an album record label that came out through Warner Music. So Warner got involved, and we put out the record, put on a show in Toronto for Canadian Music Week. It was an amazing experience, and I'd already been playing with Carl, doing acoustic gigs with Carl. I wasn't in Coney Hatch yet, but it started my friendship with Lee Aaron, which eventually led to, a gig that I've had for 10 years. And we're about to release our 7th album. Crazy.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So I always say you're the guy who needs an extra hour in the day just to get through it.
A horse tranquilizer or something. I get excited and then
and that's probably, I'm going to lead off with this first question being that where the hell did you find the time to write this fantastic book? Because I picture you at the Kelly residence when you finally get the kids off to bed, when you're writing this book, and I'm going to sit down at the computer, and you start jotting, and then your phone goes off and it's Harlequin, and hey, can you come and fill in for us on a Saturday night at Casino Rama? Well, I'm sure everything goes out the window, book goes off to the side, you learn the gig, you do it, you got Ellen Frew calling you. It's crazy. So basically, give me the timeline from basically start to finish on the book.
Well, it started with an introduction to Michael Holmes, my editor at ECW. I was bandmates in a band called Trapper with his wife, M. Griner.
Right.
We all became friends, and I had this idea. I think he was aware of my first book, and I had this idea. And, once you kind of get into a formal relationship or you get a contract or a book deal, that's the impetus. And I like those situations because then you have to put yourself down into a time frame. And, I think it was about 1.5 years of research and writing to get this one across the finish line. And, for me, music isn't just my job, like I'm a music teacher, I'm a musician. To me, that all is all the same, right? I'm a musician. But it's my passion. It's my hobby. I mean, I get up in the morning, I get up early, and I look for records, and I go to record stores. And I would talk about the music I love all day, every day to whoever listens. So really, a lot of this is just conversation, stuff that's in my head, thoughts that I formulated over something that's meant a lot to me, right? So, and fortunately, through the years, I've been able to meet some people, make contacts. I played with Gilby Clarke for years, and Gilby was kind enough to introduce me to George Lynch and Warren DeMartini, and that led to interviews. And, we played with Paul Gilbert, in festivals in Sweden, and I played with him in LA with Crash Kelly once. So, you meet these people. We opened for Def Leppard on some tour dates with Trapper, so that gave me access to Vivian Campbell through M Griner. So that opens the doors, and then you have direct access, and they're just telling their story, and I'm just kind of capturing it and relating it to my experience as a listener and fan. Basically, that's what Don't Call It Hair Metal is all about.
And that's the fantastic thing about your book is it's you doing the interviews with all these people. It's just you're not pulling apart from other interviews from other people. This is you talking directly to the artists, musicians themselves, which is always the best sell of any kind of music book, because it's legit and it's their story, how they perceive it, telling it to you.
Yeah,
telling it to me.
I did a little bit, I definitely referenced a few articles and things like that, but by and large, I tried. That's what I wanted to do, because I wanted to hear from them. I wanted to see if I was on base. Am I right about this? Especially talking with a guy like Alan Niven, who managed Guns N' Roses and was instrumental in signing Motley Crue to their first independent record deal, Dawkins, getting them signed to a major label, all that stuff, it's interesting to hear how, sometimes you have an opinion fortified, and sometimes it's challenged. And you go, oh man, maybe I was off base. But I love that. I'm not out to prove anything other than I just want to find out what people think. I wanted to find out what these artists thought about their own artistic intention.
Right. And I have to say that when I was about a quarter into reading your book, I realized by that point it was going to be a reread, because it is such a fantastic journey of yours. But any of us who grew up in that time of the 80s, we can relate. And I could, you start off the book with your first chapter titled More Than This, which you write about your father passing away, getting that knock on the cabin door. And then first song that you played was Defying Gravity by Mr. Big to get you through it. And even now, I didn't go through that similar experience with me, but just by how you worded it, by talking about you being out at a camp, out at a lake, took me back to when I was a kid and I was out on the lake, scrounging up enough batteries for the Walkman.
Yeah.
So I could play Point of Entry that I just bought in the summer of 1981, and that the Priest tape wouldn't die in the Walkman, right? So you flooded back memories to me as a reader, which was wonderful. So
great. That's what it's all about, man. Sharing experiences, right? So I'm glad that that happened for you. Thank you.
And then speaking of chapters, I'm going to be totally honest with you. When I first got the book, I scrolled through all the chapter headings because I wanted to see if you were going to actually write a chapter called Guilty Pleasures. I know how you feel about guilty pleasures in the genre of music, and I thought this would be the time for him to go off.
I was going to go off in the whole book, to be honest with you. That was part of it. Was the whole book was going to be a big middle finger to all these people who don't like it. But I even said so early on the book. I thought, you know what? That's not really even who I am. I'm just more interested. I realized what I really wanted to do was share what I loved about it. Mm-hmm. Talk to the people who I know. Sometimes rock of the 80s can be, spoken of in disparaging terms. People can think, oh, it's fluffy. They were just trying to be rich. And I'm sure there were some people, but man, there's a hell of a lot easier ways to try and be rich than to go move to LA and go starve to try and get a record deal. Right. And I would say by and large, most of these people just wanted to make great music and just loved playing and just felt a need to do that. Right.
Yeah. And I know you spoke a few minutes ago about some of the contributors to your book. Another fantastic quote right off the start of the book was from your late bandmate, the great John Regan from 4 by Fate, and of course Fairley's Comet and Peter Frampton, where he, I had a good chuckle when he talked about that. He said that in the 80s they were inhaling all the Aquanet and probably responsible for depleting the ozone layer. God, that was a brilliant quote from him. And you had guys like Chips Enough, Rudy Sarzo, Jason McMaster. You had Rick Emmett, which tells us about, Boston reaching out to him, Boston, the band.
Yeah.
It was like crazy that these guys were just like giving you these things that I never read about back in the day in Music Express or, Circus or Hit Parade, or you would never read about that. But, like it was like, you must have found some real gold in some of those quotes that those guys were throwing you.
Yeah, it was neat to hear. Like neat to hear Warren DeMartini tracking down Uli John Roth's phone number and phoning him in Germany and running up his parents' phone bill. Like I love that stuff, right? Because it speaks to the crazy things that we do. Those of us who kind of pursue this as a career path, right? Like that early naivete that kind of leads you to jump blindly into it, right? And it's neat to look back. Sometimes you look back and go, oh my God, that was so stupid. And then sometimes you go, well, you know what? If I hadn't been that stupid, I might not have ever done it. So
true.
Not a bad thing.
And it's pretty cool when you get, because Warren DeMartini does not do a lot of interviews. I don't even think he talks much to his ex-bandmates by the sounds of it. They say, hey, he talks to us, but you never hear him say, yeah, they're talking to me. Like, so good on you for, getting through that politics of inner band.
He was a quiet guy, and I wanted to talk to him. I he knew I wasn't looking for the dirt on Rat. I don't care about the dirt on Rat. I just wanted to talk about the music. And I found out, like, I didn't know that he had been in Dokken and Lynch had been in Rat, and they switched. They went crossed over to the rehearsal studios, and that Warren helped George prepare for the Ozzy interview audition. Like I didn't know. It was cool to find that stuff out.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're finding gold in this book, folks.
Yeah.
Like just stuff like that if you're a hard rock fan. But I have to say that when I was reading it, and you got a quote out of one fella who basically I thought reviewed your book without him knowing he reviewed your book, and that was Mark Slaughter, when he explained that music takes you back to a certain time. Like you go back to your city. Like for you, it'd be going back to probably North Bay, where you see, hey, I hung out with my pals here in this house, and I hung out down at this watering hole, and the whole reminiscence of years gone by, and that song will take you. You'll think of that or you'll see that image, and you'll think of that song. I mean, I thought he nailed it really on the head with that paragraph that he gave you. It was like, wow. Like,
well, there's an example of a guy where what people might say, the Beavis and Buttheads of the world would say, poser, that's poser rock. Like, because they were coming up at the kind of the apex of the visual thing where the videos were, and he's a good looking guy and the band had the big hair and they were doing all, but that guy is a dyed in the wool musician. And like, trained in jazz, like, was in a big band in high school, sang barbershop quartet, like, I mean, trained, amazing guitar player, but, he had opportunities. Also an amazingly gifted singer. So when Vinnie Vincent calls up, you're not playing guitar. Okay, well, I'll adapt. He learned how to be a frontman doing the first video, like, wow. Boys Are Gonna Rock. Like, that's so cool. And he's a really articulate guy. He sent me some of his solo records after we're done. I was like, wow. Like, I mean, people don't stop being creative, when the hits stop coming or when the multi-platinum sales, and Slaughter continued to make great music and then continue to be a great live band. Yeah. I love talking with Mark.
Yeah. That was a fantastic quote, which he just said. It just
smart guy.
Yeah. It just takes you back to that certain time. I thought, wow, he kind of just almost reviewed where I'm at in this book right there. Like it was like crazy. I thought that guy needs to write a book himself.
Yeah. He's good. A lot of them do.
Yeah. And, and other things. And, it was great that you even write about your starting point in music as a young Sean who discovered Joan Jett, Thriller, and Laura Branigan.
Yeah.
When you think of Sean Kelly, or when I think of Sean Kelly, I think of hard rock guy, right? So, I mean, even there, and, you make your points very valid for all three. And what was it about out of the three, what was it about the Laura Branigan track?
Well, I think it's the same reason that I'm attracted to all the music I'm attracted to now. I mean,
Mhm.
she had a powerful vocal. She was really emotive. She had a rasp and an attitude in her vocal. Um, uh, it's a super melodic song. I like songs, you know, it kind of hits my sweet spot for tempo. There's something about that tempo that gets my heart racing. And it's funny, it's not like the ultra fast stuff doesn't necessarily do that for me. It's something about that, those grooves just
Mhm.
speak to me, you know. I'm a child of the eighth note, dun 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 dun. You know, I don't know what it is, but I like that. And also, uh, there's one guitar figure that keeps coming back through that dun dun dun, and I'm like, I would just wait for that to come around again and again. So really, it's tons of hooks, right? All these things are hooks that keep you coming back, right?
Mhm.
And it's an interesting song too because it kind of just lopes onto itself. It's not like your standard song structure.
Mhm.
So I don't know what, but I love that song. But it's the energy, it's the feeling, and then we started hearing that feeling cross over. You know, bands like Loverboy, and then Def Leppard, and you know, and Bon Jovi, and they're kind of doing the same thing. It's pop music. The guitars got a little heavier.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and the song we're talking about is Gloria, which I forgot
Gloria by
to
Laura
mention.
Branigan.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but so and everybody's gonna go, what?
Umberto Tozzi, first of all, was an Italian pop song that was translated, actually.
Wow, no kidding. And I mean, Joan Jett when she came out, I mean, that's when that was old for many of us because I was
Yeah.
15 or I was 14 in '81, and I love rock and roll head, and that was like, wow,
That song
girl
ripped
can
out of the
sing,
speakers.
yeah, and knew that one, and of course Thriller did what Thriller did, I mean, which was massive.
Yeah, well, Thriller, I mean, like, I just finished watching a brilliant documentary about it, 40th anniversary documentary. You know, you got guys like Steve Lukather on there, the Toto
Mhm.
guys,
Yep.
and the conscious decision to bring the rock element into an artist who is traditionally allocated to R&B when really he was pure pop. Like, I mean, you know, in order to break through all those racial barriers that existed with MTV and radio, you know, brilliant. Like, I mean, like seeking out Eddie Van Halen, totally conscious choice. Like, this guy is going to be the guy who helps break us through.
Yeah.
And you know, on rock radio, you know, like that song was getting played on rock radio stations. Beat it, and then you know MTV picks up on stuff like Billie Jean. I mean, that record is just so, and it's so hyper musical. There's just so much good music on it. I threw it on the other day. I was like, wow, nonstop, beautiful chord progressions, melodies, great performances, energetic. And Michael, when you know, you don't realize how much music that guy has just in a raw vocal track. You take everything else out, and it sounds like a drum kit's going on while he's singing. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Plus, Eddie did it for free.
Yeah. Apparently, so the story goes.
Oof. Yeah, but and that's the thing. And if anybody wants to really do a deep dive in the history of Thriller, breaking through in MTV, there's a great book out on the market called "I Want My MTV."
Oh yeah, I
And
read it. Love it.
yeah, that's a
Rob
that really opened my eyes, Rob. Yeah,
Tannenbaum, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, that really opened my eyes to about how that whole scenario went down, which was like you don't you never knew that stuff as a fan in the '80s. You just thought, hey, he got on MTV, good for him,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
We didn't know, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So also in this book, and which is really kind of cool, you go into basically the architects of metal.
Yeah.
You have a section where you focus on Led Zeppelin, Alice Cooper, New York Dolls, Kiss, Aerosmith, AC/DC, and of course Van Halen. Um, and I think it was smart on your part to do that because it kind of would give. I'm not a big New York Dolls fan, but after I read it, I went on Apple and downloaded some New York Dolls. So I mean, it even opened my old man eyes to something new. I have always heard the New York Dolls and the Kiss, the influence Kiss, and yada yada. But you know, you got right down into breaking down how they pertained and pushed I don't know, I don't want to say this their sound, which kind of helped develop other bands which borrowed, like Poison obviously borrowed from the New York Dolls, I would think. I mean, if anything, image wise.
Yeah.
And you also throw down what albums you would recommend from each band, which I thought was really cool. And of course, all 6 Roth albums were mentioned.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool that, you're just not writing about straight hair metal. You're talking about the forefathers. I mean, we get into Led Zeppelin, and anybody that's an 80s rock fan knows that Led Zeppelin in the 80s, late 80s, comes Kingdom Come.
Well, I think what we're trying to do there, or what I was trying to do was, what was that? Knock something up.
True rocker.
Oh yeah, I'm bull in a china shop. But yeah, what I was trying to do was to say, hey, listen, if you think these bands are cool and legitimate, if New York Dolls is hip and cool and legitimate, and an AC/DC or a Led Zeppelin, here's where these bands from the 80s derived influence from, right? And here are the musical touchstones. So if you're looking for a gateway, you can't quite get there yet by listening to the first Poison record. Well, maybe if you go back and listen to New York Dolls or Kiss, and you have some touchstones, and maybe you look at it through a different prism. That's all. It was just more to show lineage. I'm trying to kind of do an overarching idea that 80s rock is part of the overall tapestry of rock and roll in general, and deserves the best of it, deserves as much respect as rock and roll from any genre. So you have to look back to go forward.
Perfect. And you did it brilliantly. And speaking of Van Halen, what does the date August 18th, 1986 mean to you?
BTO, Loverboy, Van Halen, C&E Stadium with my brother-in-law Jim. Life-changing, game-changing. And, as much as I can't argue on an artistic level the impact of the original Van Halen, that's on a whole other level. My Van Halen is the 5150 era Van Halen. That was where I really fell in love with Van Halen. And that record is nearest and dearest of all the Van Halen catalog. Emotionally, I can't separate that from my formative years, right? And it's a brilliant record. I think, for all the keyboard stuff, to me, it's as rock and roll as anything. It's loose and flying by the seat of its pants, and Sammy's singing up in the highest register he's ever sung, and Eddie's playing fast and loose. And I love that record. I think it's a beautiful, short, explosive rock and roll record. And, people talk about the sound and the electronic drums. But the guy making a record in the size of a shoebox, you can't fit the full drum kit. I love all that too.
Yeah.
So they make, they play on the Simmons pads, and brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the whole thing. I mean, a lot of people split down the middle with them, Dave or Sammy. To me, it was I was good with both.
Continuation.
Yeah, and when Roth went solo, I thought, well, if anything, in 1988, you're getting Skyscraper and 081-2. You're getting 2 albums, right? You're getting, so same with Eat 'Em and Smile on 5150 and 86.
Arguably, it might have been harder for Van Halen to keep going with Roth. Sammy probably gave those guys a commercial extension. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, well, totally. And so. Also, you also, I don't want to say decompress, but you talk about a lot of albums, and a lot of albums that actually came back to my radar in your book. And the thing I liked about it was not only did you talk about the big albums by Def Leppard, Quiet Riot, Motley Crue, you talked about those follow-ups, as in Quiet Riot's case, Metal Health into
Condition
Critical, and what was the damn? I just brain farted here. And Motley from Shout into Theater of Pain. I was in my mid-teens when these albums were dropping, and thanks to you, when I was down in Sudbury back in October, I picked up Condition Critical.
Oh, right on. Well, yeah, I think it's probably a better record, really, song-wise, in terms of original songs than Metal Health. I mean, I think the songs are really strong. You know,
Mhm.
it was just that at that point you had this really weird transition in 1985.
Yeah.
Because it's before Bon Jovi has really kind of gone and gotten Bruce Fairbairn and Bob Rock involved and really kind of extrapolated on the sound that
Mhm.
even Sweet and Black and Blue were kind of, you know, pioneering out of Vancouver. And it's coming out of the first wave of commercial mainstream success for hard rock with Def Leppard and Quiet Riot, you know, with Metal Health, the first record. 85 was like a bit odd, you know, like Theater of Pain's a bit of an odd Motley Crue record. And, you know, Condition Critical was a little odd. You got Y&T kind of, they got a hit, Summertime Girls, but really are they a 70s band, or they kind of look like football players, but they're kind of dressing like hair metal guys. Like, you know, it was an interesting time period. Autograph had that big hit with Turn Up the Radio, but there's a lot of great records coming out in 85. You know, it was cool. And a lot of people were experimenting with more keyboards, and it was neat. It was neat.
And that's the thing too, is like you wrote about, obviously, Condition Critical, for instance. And I remember, like, we all had Metal Health at the time when Condition Critical dropped. You know, at first you're right into it, but then as time passes on, you're kind of going back to Metal Health, and you kind of forget about Condition Critical.
Yeah.
But then all these years later, you come across it, you writing about it, and it's like, yeah, you know what? Stomp your hands, clap your feet. Yeah, it's a pretty good track, man.
Yeah,
you know, it's just a sign of the times. You know,
that's that's to me as strong as anything that's on Metal Health.
Yeah, and they got just destroyed for doing another Slade cover, right?
Yeah,
but
worked once.
Yeah, it is.
Again, you know, like that's what, and that unfortunately down the road, that thinking kind of did it end up probably precipitating the end of the scene, right? But
yeah, totally. And so from the Van Halen date being a pretty big impact moment in this book, another huge impact moment in your life was the Twisted Sister Stay Hungry album.
Oh, yeah.
And please just tell me the full story from Stay Hungry to actually what happened when you auditioned for a certain somebody from Twisted Sister. 30 years later.
Yeah, like, I mean, you know, I had already been getting into, you know, I've been hearing Pyromania and Aldo Nova. I'm hearing these sounds. Friends are playing these records. This is cool. I like the song. I hear Quiet Riot. Wow, I love that song. But and Motley showed at the Devil, big record. But man, seeing Dee Snider, seeing those Twisted Sister videos, and when I realized the humor and the joyfulness and the color and the pointy guitars, you know, the Guild X79, JJ's got that, Eddie Ojeda's got the bullseye, you know, like I was just like, wow, what's happening? Like I just fell for it, and the strength of the songs on that record, Dee's vocal approach, you know, I just had to be a part of that. I remember that was the first thing I learned to play on guitar was that solo to We're Not Gonna Take It. You know, I taught myself that simple melody, simple sing-along melody, but perfect, you know. And yeah, you know, and that was the formative influence. That's ground zero for me as a musician. I can say that emphatically. Twisted Sister's ground zero for me. So years and years later, and other bands and experiences, I ended up working with a United States band called 4x Fate. And their manager is Danny Stanton, who is also Twisted Sister's agent. And we end up, you know, I remember the first time, like, we played with them in Belgium. We played at a festival with them in Belgium. And I was just like, holy crap, like I'm on a bill with Twisted Sister. We had our own dressing room area, but I didn't really see, I saw JJ and I saw Mark, but I didn't really see D. Like, you didn't see him. But I just remember being on the side of the stage where they came on and he walked by and you just feel like this energy off the guy, right? It's so intense. And then they go and just absolutely destroy 40,000 Belgian rock fans. I was like, incredibly intense, right?
Yeah.
Go to the next year, and I noticed that Dee Snider has a rock and roll Christmas musical that's coming to town.
Okay.
And so I just reach out to Danny and say, hey, man, I don't know. if you have any sway, do you think you could, is there any audition or anything? Danny puts in a few calls. Sure enough, I get a call and I've got an audition. But what I don't realize, I think the audition is playing guitar in the orchestra, right? I'm going to play guitar in the pit. And no, you are on stage and you're not just playing guitar, you are singing, dancing, and acting.
Wow.
Well, here's the problem. I'm not a great singer to start off with, but I sure as hell can't dance and I sure as hell can't act, But I want this, So I said, okay, well, I'm going to send me the stuff. And, learning the music wasn't too tough. I mean, I grew up with it and then, I'm a professional musician. I'll take a shot at it. So anyway, long story short, I go in and, go through the whole audition process. I won't give it away too much because it goes through it in the book, but it was with the help of an acting coach and a really patient choreographer, I got through that, and it ended up being, I got the gig, and getting to work with Dee was just absolutely the greatest professional experience in my life. A lot of amazing things happened out of that show, a lot of life-changing things.
And how much of a thrill was it for you to hear those words come out of his mouth telling you that you rose to the occasion?
Yeah, I couldn't even really process it,
Really?
All I knew was that I was going to have a chance to go play the first guitar solo I ever learned for the guy who wrote the melody to it. I was going to play. So I said, the rest I don't know about, but I'm going to kick the shit out of this. I know that. And I went out and I played it with all my heart. And I had that part down, and it was, then the rest of it, I guess they figured that part was solid enough that they'd help me with the rest. And God love them. They all did. And it was awesome. I loved the challenge. It was the greatest challenge of my life, and I loved it.
And then you just finished a few months ago, I think, you were part of Rock of Ages.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Loved it. Like, I mean, you're playing the soundtrack of your life.
Yeah.
Actually, a guy from Sudbury, Gino Del Sol, we talked about all the time, the other guitar player, get to wear a spiky leather jacket and you're on a stage. It looks like Judas Priest Turbo and Pyro and you're finger tapping and dive bomb. Oh man, you're playing all these great songs. And we ended every show running down the stairs, and in front of the audience and stuff's blowing up and lasers. And like, yeah, and you get to do this every day, all week. This is your job.
Jesus, man, that's fantastic.
I was teaching school too. I had a full-time job, so I'd be teaching music all day, then right down to the theater, play all night. But it was amazing.
And I'm sure caffeine was kicking in overdrive for you at that.
Oh yeah. Definitely. It was an intense year. It was tiring because there was times I had to sub out in the musical because I'd have to go Lear and go do the Monsters of Rock cruise, or I'm flying into this gig and you're hoping you're playing, you're gonna make your connection. I'd have a sub waiting for me. No man, I'm in the plane. I'm in the car. I'll be there. Run on stage, But that was man. It was exciting.
It was exciting. Yeah, you got through it and you wrote about it. And yeah, folks, you got to check it out. It's a fantastic story of perseverance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you pushed it and you got it. I mean, you knew you wanted it. You were hoping to get it, but your talent backed it up. And for a guy like Dee Snider to pick up on that, because Dee Snider, it's Dee Snider, man. He knows talent,
Well, he doesn't suffer fools, I'll tell you that much. So I mean, I'd like to think that I felt an obligation to him as a person. He's a wonderful human being too. I felt an obligation to him to always give 110%. And I really do feel that every time I get a chance to perform, because it's either someone paying to come see you or someone relying on you. You can't let people down. And I don't find it any great sacrifice to give 100% because I love it so much. So I'm obsessed with it. So I just want to do the best I can. I'm certainly not the most talented musician in the world. I'm not even the most talented musician on the street. I think I heard some kid playing down the road. I was like, geez, I wish I could do that, but it's not necessarily all about that, right? It's how much do you love it and how much can you give to it, right? And what you give, you get. I do.
And from how you learned, like you mentioned earlier, you sat there and you figured out the guitar solo and we're not going to take it. Whereas this day and age, anybody can learn how to play guitar and go off YouTube and learn it in 10 minutes. You did it the old school way, buying Guitar World and Guitar for the Practicing Musician, and trying to get the song on cassette tape, and probably figuring it out.
You're lifting the needle on the record, but I certainly don't begrudge it. It's amazing what kids have access to, and the growth and the ability and the access to all the different music. I wish I had that for sure. But to your point, I think it does breed a little bit of a different type of player in that, you kind of develop your own way of thinking, your own process, and the time put into that. Maybe you don't get it exactly right, but you start developing your own take on it. And I think that was something I kind of did early on. I used to think it was a weakness, right? I'd say, oh man, I can't play this exactly like this guy. I keep doing this thing, but maybe that thing separates you. And, I think you should get an identity and a sound. At least I'd like to think so. Maybe I'm
you totally got your own sound. I mean, you can listen to Postcard from Germany, and I can tell everybody right now, you listen to the two studio Coney tracks, or you even go into the Coney stuff and listen to it just lift off at the end of Fallen Angel, and also lifting off at the end of Monkey Bars.
Oh yeah, they let me off the leash sometimes for those ones.
and that's it. And that's your style coming through. I mean, you're not playing, not to me, I don't play guitar, but I'm not hearing you doing a bunch of mumbo jumbo Ingwe notes. Like, just, I can actually understand.
I'd like to be able to do those, though. I love Ingwe. I still love it.
I'm not knocking Ingwe. I'm just saying that the speed limit, he's bonkers. And I sometimes, as a non-guitar player, have a hard time listening to that kind of.
Yeah. It could be a lot of information, right? And I get it. I tend to like more melodic players too, And it's funny, like so much of that is taste, right? But that's why I feel so lucky in the situation I'm in now with Lee Aaron, Coney Hatch, and my own thing now. I'm kind of doing the Crash Kelly thing again. Is that, man, I feel like I've even playing with Alan Frew and even playing with Carol Pope, I get a chance to express all these things that I feel equally attached to, Lee Aaron, I tend to play more in the 70s kind of classic rock bluesy style. Coney's got a bit of that, but it has a bit more maybe of the 80s, melodic flash. The Crash Kelly thing's a total mishmash of both, but really it's just the way I hear music and interpret it, right? And I try and interpret the things that I love and that inspired me.
Perfect. And when we talk about music of the 80s, the hard rock / metal, we can't not talk about Image. And when I think of Image, I think of two bands. The first one being Kiss.
Yeah.
I started high school in the fall of 81. So I thought I'd be a cool kid in grade 9 and wear my Kiss Dynasty tour shirt from 79.
Yeah.
And by lunchtime, somebody already dosed me with perfume. And I thought, oh man, this isn't cool. And you know what? I ain't telling anybody I just bought the Elder. Right? Like, but you forward 2 years later, they take off the makeup and Kiss is kind of cool again. The Lick It Up album, and it was funny, like a short image of 2 years span of being, hey, it's not cool for you to like Kiss, all of a sudden, hey, you know what, that's a pretty cool song, Lick It Up. I mean, another band I think of image wise is Whitesnake, which you write about in the book.
Yeah.
Talk about the two different versions. I mean, yeah, I know the version you're talking about when you talk about Whitesnake 1980 into 81. Look at the cover of Live in the Heart of the City.
Yeah.
You got dudes that look like they could be, working at a truck stop.
Yeah, Bernie Marsden, Mel Galley.
Yeah, and by 87,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the 87 version, that's not what you're seeing is not what you're hearing,
No.
That was put together by John Kolodner. And it was a brilliant move. It was brilliant because I was so captivated by the look of that band. And that band they were all-stars. Like when they came time to deliver it live, it was Vandenberg, Vivian Campbell, Sarzo, Tommy Aldridge. I mean, it was outstanding, right? Like it was incredible. It was the right move. It was the right band at the time. And, there was a cultural zeitgeist going on. Yeah, images. I've kind of learned to really lean into it now, and I've been fortunate. You know, I work with an amazing stylist, Alicia Hodgins, and she, you know, she's so gifted at being able to, you know, to see things from that visual perspective, that artistic perspective, and that stuff enhances your performance. You know, like when you just have, like, you know, when you feel good about the way you look, especially with rock and roll, this type of rock and roll, like you're kind of showing people how to listen, right? Like, I mean, that's a really valuable thing. So, you know, I'm leaning into that. I'm getting the crazier guitar. I have a signature guitar coming out.
Oh, nice.
It's actually the by a guy named Les Godfrey Guitars. It's the X Squire SK. So that's coming out, and it's hot pink, man. I love it, and I can't wait. And I got that because, you know, Vinnie Vincent. So, you know, I just turned 51. I'm leaning into it, man. I'm leaning into that stuff. And, you know, and then you tailor it to who you're working with, you know, like you find the thing that works with that project. Like, how can I bring that thing? Because I love the visual aspect of it. I love the performative aspect of rock and roll. That's why I love doing musicals. I love all that stuff.
Yeah. And
I don't think it takes away from the music. I think if you do it right, it ameliorates the music.
Geez, you're going to have to do another Rock of Ages so you can just flash that hot pink guitar all night.
Oh, man, I can't wait. I can't wait. Anytime. Call me up.
So, and like, you know, we talk about image, and, you know, you have Ozzy going into the early 80s. He has Randy Rhoads, cool, young looking rock guy. And then you have Ronnie James Dio, the cool, young Vivian Campbell, right? And then you have David Coverdale with a cool, young looking John Sykes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost, like it was, these guys were trying, maybe, I think they were all following each other's lead. Like, thinking,
the foil, right? You want, that foil, that classic thing with the lead singer and the guitar player, you know, like it's, you know, that's a classic thing. And for sure, you know, like you wanted the energetic young firecracker. That was what was de rigueur for that music. You know, it was exciting, high energy music, and it required that type of visual and technical prowess.
Yeah. And then, as you know, as the 80s progress, I mean, I still like it to this day. Kingdom Come's debut.
It's amazing.
It is an amazing record, but boy, those guys got hammered by everybody. But, you know, and then 4 years ago, a band like Greta Van Fleet comes out, sounding like Zeppelin. Everybody's cool with it, and I'm thinking, oh, well, Kingdom Come. Well, most
not
people,
everybody. They get hammered too, right? But the problem with Kingdom Come was they should. I can't get over how they didn't just own it. Like they started trying to deny it. I remember reading interviews, and, you know, and I'm sure it got misquoted, but they'd say, "Oh, I'm not really into Jimmy Page. I'm into Jimi Hendrix." Well, that might be true from a lead guitar perspective, but I talked in my book. I talked to John Webster, who keyboard player, great keyboard player. He played on the record. That was a conscious decision. Like, we're doing the Zeppelin thing here. Like, there's no secrets. Let's get the Mellotron out. Like, you know, we're gonna do the Kashmir thing. We're gonna take a little bit of Black Dog. We're gonna, like, it was there. And if they would have just said, "Yeah, man, we love Zeppelin. That's what we're doing," it would have been cool. But when they tried to duck it, and it just, the backlash overtook them, and it's too bad, because I mean, the record was undeniable. It was a smash anyway. It was still a hit record.
Yeah, I mean, just listen to Get It On and those drums at the end. That's the Bob Rock sound there. Boom.
Yeah, man. Little Mountain Sound.
Little Mountain Sound. And speaking of keyboards, the thing I remember, just over a year ago, when I put the All-Star Rock panel together, you were part of it, and we did a breakdown on UFO's Stranger in the Night.
Yeah.
And we got into the whole keyboard issue. I was really fascinated that when you did talk to John Webster, and how much keyboards are actually on the Dr. Feelgood album. I was like, what? Really? I got to hear this now again. Like, it's
all those records, records. The guitars are layered with sonic underpinnings of synthesizer.
Yeah, it was like, and here I am all these years later. You see the crew is 4 guys. You think it's those 4 guys. You didn't know that there's a dude helping them push that sound to another level. Like,
oh, for sure, man. And sometimes it was a whole other guy playing your instrument, you know, like it happened, and it still happens. I've done that work myself. I've gone in and played on people's records and not taken a credit because it's like okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, when you got to pay the rent, from my perspective, I was like, sure, no problem. What do you need? A couple of E chords here, you got it, man.
Yeah, that's
No
it.
problem.
So that's awesome. So, and you know, I watched a few of the other podcasts that you've done in promoting the book, and I think one of the best interviews I've seen you do was with a guy you talked to in your book, Jason McMaster.
Oh yeah,
and his pal Dave. They're on their
Dave Glasgow.
Talk Louder podcast. Everybody go check them out and give them a follow, but only after you finish watching mine and Sean's. Don't cut us off. But you know, and Jason McMaster, and I mean, he is the singer of Dangerous Toys, and you know,
and Dirty Looks too.
And I think he even filled in for Accept, didn't he, at one point?
Yeah, and Armored Saint, I think. Like the guy is just
super cool. And he also gave some real good perspective. But by reading about what he had to say, how you talked about him in your book, made me go back and discover the debut album. You know, like we don't even have to talk about how great of a track Scared is.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff on there, like, you know, Sporting a Woody.
What's that about? No.
Is it the same thing as Shake It? But
no.
But you know, he gave some really good insight as well, because I think Dangerous Toys debut came out at 89, I think. Am I right time frame? And that's when everything was starting to shift a little bit. But he's a fascinating guy. Like he's super awesome to listen to. Yeah.
He's a diehard fan. He was in a progressive metal band in the early 80s called Watchtower. You know, like he's Jason is a super pro, and Dave Glesner is another expert. You know, both those guys, good Texas guys. I actually met Dave. Crash Kelly played the South by Southwest Festival in Austin in 2005. So it was the first time we talked in almost 20 years. You know, pretty crazy.
And they're super nice, and they're super nice guys. I mean, it's a kind. And the best, after I watched yours, I started scrolling to see who else they had on there, and I didn't realize that Jason was in a Watchtower band with Billy White, who I only know from the Don Dock and Up From the Ashes record.
Right.
I always wondered what happened to that guy, because boy, he blew some serious lead on that Up From the Ashes album. So it was great to see him and hear what he had been doing in the last 30 years and talking about it. So yeah, everybody check out the Talking Louder podcast. So as we get through your book, you talk about the 80s into the 90s, and you talk to guys like, you know, and again, who've been there, done it, guys like Scotty Hill, and we know the whole Skid Row thing where they were, and then it kind of eventually went down on him. He gives some great, fascinating insight. As like everybody you talk to just gave really great points, but it's also interesting to read the fallout that, you know, it had on a lot of these bands. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's tough, you know, like you're riding this adrenaline high of, you've worked so hard and you've achieved this stuff and you want to keep going. You finally maybe have a little bit of financial comfort, you know, you can breathe a little bit, but more so it's the feeling of being, you know, loved and then being abandoned, right? Like, and I can only imagine that is really tough, you know? Like, I mean, I know what it's like to lose a record deal. Like that sucks. Like bad feeling, you know, like there's the elation of the way up, and then the way down is not all that fun, right? But you know, I think what was really inspiring about a lot of these people is you saw that they were lifelong musicians. It's like, well, it's not like it's an option. Like Scotty Hill, man, went from Wembley Arena to like those guys were sleeping in sleeping bags on the road to save money, you know?
Yeah.
They rebuilt that thing to where they're at now, which is a really great place, where they're really happy making the music they want to make with the people they want to make it with. Like, I mean, that's pretty impressive, you know?
Yeah, and and that's the thing. I know everybody focuses on Seattle and Kurt Cobain and Nirvana and the Seattle sound, but I look at it from my perspective of when I from 1990 into 1991, I was 23 going on 24.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, okay, now I'm out of the house. Now I got to pay rent and I got to pay electricity. Whereas when I was living at home, I could buy the first Dangerous toys. But now that they've dropped the new record, I got to pay the electricity. So it's almost like I formulated, like, take for instance the back end of October of 91. I had an A list and a B list.
Yeah.
My A list was Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusions, Tesla, Psychotic Supper, The Cult, Ceremony.
Yeah.
And then my B list was like Dangerous Toys, even Ozzy, No More Tears. I just couldn't. I couldn't.
Yeah, you can't afford it.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot of things. We were getting older, and I think a lot of people just so focus on the music. Yeah, sure, the music probably maybe became oversaturated because you had all these Guns N' Roses spawning off a 1,000 bands, and you're trying to keep up buying it all as a fan, but your money starts going elsewhere, and you're like, I'll eventually get that, so.
Yeah, and it stops being on your radar because, like as you say, you're getting older. There's a younger group of listeners coming up, and they want their own thing.
Yeah.
Kids want their own music. They don't want their big brother's music, they want their own thing. So
yeah.
And it speaks to their experience,
Yeah, and it totally does. And Sean, is there really anything else you want to add about this book? Because
no, man, you've done an amazing job covering it, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. All I'm going to say is I've just completed recording a Crash Kelly record that's a covers record that serves as a companion to this book. So I covered some of the some of the bands that all the bands that I talked about, all the bands that I recorded cover versions of. They're all talked about in the book, but the book actually ranged from 5 brand new songs I covered, 80s hard rock classics, and then also some 70s covers, glam rock covers that were B-sides for Crash Kelly albums in Japan, and bonus tracks, because in Japan you have to give them a bonus track.
Yeah.
They need bonus track because it costs more money to buy a domestic CD in Japan than an import. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But so it's kind of a neat compendium of 70s and 80s rock, and what I like about that record is that it's kind of my re-entry point into the marketplace with Crash Kelly, but it also a good summation of what it was that inspired me to do the Crash Kelly thing in the first place. So that record's going to come out early in the new year through Music in Motion, which is my merchandising company's record label arm, and we're really excited about that. And but that's the only thing I wanted to say about the book. And I've just started writing a new book, so new book that's going to come out in 2025. So wow. As long as if you like this one, you'll be interested in the new one, I think.
Okay, so yeah, because I saw you were posting a few things that you just recently spoke to JJ French.
Yeah, I did.
And you're talking about guitars. So for a non-guitar player guy like me, it'll be your third book.
Yeah.
So it'll be right in my wheelhouse still.
I think so, because as much as it's going to be guitar centric, it's about the emotional value of what guitars do for us as players, but also as listeners, right? And as always, I'll tie it into the music and this is meant to be a fun book, so I think it's going to be a fun read.
That's awesome. So, and with the Crash Kelly stuff, so you're going to have it on vinyl, CD, and the stream sites?
I don't know about vinyl. We're going to definitely do. I'm starting with CDs. Okay. Streaming, I don't know. I'm not that concerned whether it's on streaming or not, to be honest, because really, Crash Kelly is just about. I'm making it the way I want it to be. So I want to just make a record. I just feel this impetus to make this record. So it'll be available with artwork and a nice CD package. You can pick it up and we'll see how it goes. I'm putting my foot in the water. It's been a while since we've been in the market. And really, I know that there are definitely, I see it with I'm touring with Gnar and Coney Hatch. There are people around the world who supported Crash Kelly and have those records, and it's kind of a thank you and a little bit of a re-entry point. Let's put it that way. So I'm putting this record out. You can get it if you want, and then we'll see how it goes. If there's demand for it, yeah, we'll put it out. I'll put it up for streaming for sure.
Perfect. So yeah. And once I get word of that, we'll be sharing around all that info for everybody to hit up Sean for that CD. I actually look forward to hearing it. So
yeah, man, I'm very happy. Frank Greiner mixed it. Great Frank Greiner. Rob Zombie, Perfect Circle.
Yeah,
great mixing engineer. So I'm really proud of it.
There we go. Maybe we need 26 hours in the day now, my friend.
Yeah, man. Well, you know what? Right now, I got to say, it was such a crazy year. So much traveling, so much, musical, right up through Christmas. Like, I'm an elementary school music teacher, and, we put on Christmas concerts. We put a concert down at the Ontario Legislature with the choir, and then into the 75-piece grade 8 concert band. Like, it's a lot of work, but I love every minute of it. And now it's just about recharging the batteries and coming in hot for the new year.
That's awesome, Sean. Well, you know what? Thanks again for always making time to come on and talk to me. And, like I said, everybody needs to check out this book. I'm going to show it again. I probably showed it 10 times in our chat, but you really need to get it. I mean, it just talks about the whole genre that we all grew up, love, still continue to listen to. And it's one man's journey, but it's all of our journeys. So thank you, Sean.
Thank you, man.
And everybody, thanks for watching. And we'll be talking to you soon on the Distortion Den. Thanks for joining and watching. Take care.